Hi, feelers. It's Christina,
And Danny.
and we are coming at you from the editor's couch. We recorded the episode you're going to hear about maybe a month ago, a little more than a month ago. And we had no idea what was going to transpire, especially in the last week. It's very timely, as you'll hear in the episode, that we are talking about the things that we talked about. But we didn't want to just go right into the episode without bringing a little awareness to what is going on in Latiné communities today.
Correct. So we are definitely excited to have our guest on that we have today, who is just the most absolute gem of a person. But we had to really sit with ourselves and say, like, these are some of the things that we're always talking about when we sit on the couch and the things that affect our communities directly. And so we just wanted to take a second to address some of the ICE raids that are happening across Southern California. That includes Los Angeles and San Diego and really nationwide. But here, just in the last 2 weeks, obviously, Southern California has been a little bit more heavily impacted, as we've all seen and recognized. And so, us being the girlies that we are and always talking about how certain things impact us individually and as a collective and as communities who are aligned in a lot of our experiences being both Latine and Black Americans, we just wanted to take a second to say, like, our heart goes out to everyone who is both directly and indirectly affected by some of the things happening.
Yeah, definitely. I just felt like glossing over this would feel very tone deaf in light of everything. But I did just want to put out a note of encouragement that it is okay to feel scared, overwhelmed, burnt out, heartbroken by all the things that are going on, and really take care of yourself throughout these things. I know that it's really easy to kind of doom scroll on social media because we just want to be in the know and know what's going on in the world, but it can kind of lead to that like emotional fatigue. But I just wanted to encourage anyone who's listening that like this is really the time to let your light shine, whether it's sharing your art, using your business to build awareness. If you have a podcast, sharing your voice and your story on your podcast, gathering with your loved ones, the people that you value the most and who see you as a person, using this time to really be who you are unapologetically, full out in a time where it feels scary to do so. I think that, as we say a lot in times like this, like love is way stronger than fear. And it's times like these where we do need each other in, as BIPOC communities. And that doesn't mean that I'm telling you to go out into the street and protest. I'm just saying that in whatever way feels best to you right now and however you can show up, it's really just important that we band together.
Right. I agree that being yourself and showing up as 100% yourself is actually a form of resistance when you're constantly being told that it's not okay to be you. So even if you are not monetarily able to afford to miss work to attend a protest or miss work in general, and you just have to keep showing up to your everyday life in the midst of chaos, we understand that and we acknowledge it. And it's important to take a step back and realize that we can fight in other ways than just being physically present somewhere.
Right. And speaking to that, if you do want to get involved in other ways, we have some resources for you. Now, if you or a loved one are being affected directly and you need some help, there's a hotline that you can call. It is the National Network for Immigrant and Refugee Rights Hotline. We're going to put the number in the show notes for you, also a link to their website. And then for other resources or ways that you can like volunteer or help out that maybe in a safer way than protesting right now, there's United We Dream, and they're the largest immigrant youth-led community in the country. They create welcoming spaces for young people regardless of their immigration status. And something that I really loved is that they support women and LGBTQ youth and communities, which I think is really important. Also, again, speaks to our episode today. And I mean, it is Pride Month. It's Pride all the time, but I just really wanted to highlight that organization because of that. And then if you can and want to donate monetarily, I found it's a certified and backed organization. So you know that your money is going directly to families. They are a registered nonprofit. It's the National Immigrant Justice Center. and I'll put the link and all the ways that you can get involved in our show notes below.
Yeah. So with that, we just wanted to kind of give a little feeling and little moment of encouragement for everyone because we feel the heaviness and we feel the intensity of everything. But I think seeing all of us kind of come together, protest or otherwise, and just kind of figuring out this ideology that solidarity is what we need, that's going to help us get through really tough times now and in the future as we are anticipating. We pretty much knew would happen starting in November. So
Right.
we were equipped and we were ready. And I think now that fight, for lack of a better word, and however you want to define that for yourself, is going to be really important right now. So with all that being said, we send all of our love, we send all of our empathy, and we're
Mhm.
going to introduce our lovely guests for today.
Yeah, of course. So stay tuned and enjoy this episode that is for Pride Month, primarily when we recorded this, but it also is a story that highlights immigrant stories. So we hope that you enjoy our conversation with Katherine Bahena-Benitez.
Today we have Katherine Bahena-Benitez, she, who is a queer Mexican Indigenous multidisciplinary artist living between New York and California. She is an actor, writer, filmmaker, director, model, and teaching artist. She says, con mucho amor y cariño, I do this for our gente, I do this for us. Welcome to the podcast, Katherine.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me.
Of
It's really
course.
sweet.
We're so
Yes, yes.
excited.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. I think that our origin story is so millennial and Gen Z of us.
Mm.
So we connected on TikTok, and I was like, I need to talk to this girl. I have to have her on the podcast. We were just so excited to see all the projects you're working on. So we're
Mm.
so excited to have you.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I remember I was scrolling through TikTok and then y'all came up and I was like, wait, hold on. They're saying something really beautiful that resonated with me. Y'all were talking about like centering yourself and self love. And I've been on that journey. So it was like perfect. And then I remember that I had followed y'all followed back, and we were like, wait, I love what y'all do. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
yeah. It was just
It
such
was a
a synergy sync up.
Yeah, it was a big love fest, I think. That's
Hmm.
we were like, and how quickly it became just like, yes, like let's do it and let's do the interview and let's come on. So it was so nice that you said yes to us and we appreciate it.
Of course. Thank y'all for reaching out.
Of course. So, we have a segment on our podcast every single week where we ask what's in your cup. So, if you're sipping on anything, like share with the girlies and the gays what you're sipping on. And then, of course, how are you checking in? So, like, what's in your life cup?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was drinking a licuado, which is
Ooh.
like a milkshake, right? And it just basically had
Mhm.
like fresas, leche, coconut, and ice. So that's what I was drinking.
Ooh.
I would show it on camera, but the licuado, the way that it started to sit, I think it might like look a little different, you know?
Right.
Yeah, stuff
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
to settle. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess what's in my cup in life, correct? I guess what's like filling me is just being back in California. I was in the East Coast and just returning to California has been so sweet. The sun, the weather, my family,
Mhm.
the art here. I'm reclaiming a part of me that I feel like I just unintentionally lost for some time. So it's just really sweet to be back, to
Mhm.
return, and to just remember my existence here. Hmm.
Yeah. Is this where
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
from originally? Were you born and raised in California?
Yes, I was born and raised in California. I was born and raised in a city called Stockton. It's near
Okay.
Sacramento.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, it was just like a beautiful upbringing with also just the realities of what it meant to be someone with the identifiers that I hold, which is like first gen,
Mhm.
queer, child of immigrants, child of Mexican indigenous
Mhm.
peoples. My parents are campesinos.
Mhm.
So there was like many layers to what it was growing up, but it was also like really beautiful, really sweet. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. That sounds beautiful.
Yes, I love that so much. I know you said it was unintentional, so that's really important to note, I think, because we don't ever intentionally leave our roots behind. I think we just get so busy
Mhm.
with life and all the things that we have going on, especially when you're so involved in artistry and then the industry that you're in. Like it's very
Mm.
busy, busy, busy. Like stuff gets stacked on top of each other. So coming back to, I know you're there for a project, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so coming back there to for a project is like it's one thing, but then you kind of have this duality of both. It's like, oh, I get to come home again, but also I still get to work. So,
Yeah.
it's a party in both ways.
Yeah, I do feel like I resonate deeply as far as, sometimes like the migration calls us not because we want to, but because sometimes that's just a path that we need to go on for opportunities to better our
Mhm.
lives. I think about my parents who they left Mexico in order to pursue a better life here in California, and how as much as they didn't want to, they feel like they needed to. And so my
Mm.
story doesn't necessarily align fully with theirs, but I did feel in a sense that I had to leave home in order to pursue my dreams. But yeah,
Mm.
I would have never thought that my life would end up being in the East Coast, though. I had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a culture shock. I mean, you have so much culture over there on the East Coast, but it's just so different. I think the West and East Coast have so many beautiful parts about themselves
Hmm.
individually that you're just not really sure like how you're going to adapt to something so different. But speaking to that and finally realizing that that was going to be a part of your journey to be on a totally separate coast, could you
Yeah.
share with our feelers, which is our audience, your path to becoming the artist that you are today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was very non-linear. Non-linear in the sense that, growing up, I had no idea that this was something that I could even pursue, which is the craft and the journey of storytelling as a performer and as a writer, and specifically in the realms of theater, performance, and film. I had no idea that this was
Mhm.
something that people could pursue. I mean, I'm the first in my family. Again, there's like so many layers of being first generation. I feel that I was experiencing life for the first time with my parents, and they don't speak English, so it was just so difficult navigating school, navigating parent teacher conferences, wanting my parents to be
Mm.
involved, but they didn't know how, and then they were constantly working. So I didn't have time to really dream of a life in the arts. I didn't really have time to question if that was something even for me. And then it wasn't until high school that I went to a school that is renowned for the performing arts. And at the time, I had many friends that were involved in performing arts. And it was something that I thought maybe I could do, but I was like, no, those are things that my friends are doing. The school was renowned for the performing arts. And then if you weren't in the arts, there were other learning communities that you could be a part of. And so I ended up doing business and
Oh.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, okay, my life is going to be in business. I'm going to focus on accounting. I don't know. I thought I had my life figured out. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until college that I began to actually sit with the feelings that I was having, which was when I was younger. I was dreaming of a
Mhm.
life in the arts, and I remember being about 12 or 11 years old, and watching films and movies, and they were mostly like on Telemundo, and just that was our source of film because we didn't have cable, so it was all like in
Mhm.
Spanish, but it was something that I really enjoyed watching. And then one time I just remember just running to my mom and I'm like, I'm gonna be an actor. And then me mommy, she just looked at me and she smiled and she continued washing dishes. And I'm so grateful that she didn't say anything, because I think if she would have shut down my dreams, I would have totally taken that with me and be like, okay, I'm not supposed to do that. But instead, she just like
Mm.
she just smiled and continued doing her thing, and in many ways, I feel like that saved me. And yeah, when I got to college, I finally decided that it was my turn to pursue this life that I had been wanting for a while, and that I needed to do it for me. And that
Mm.
there wasn't going to be a right way how to do it. I just knew that regardless of the obstacles, I was going to be relentless about it and fearless.
Mhm.
Yes. And yeah, I'm so grateful that the department ended up really like supporting me. The Department of Theater and Film and Dance ended up really just taking me under their wing. And again, I didn't even change my major. I think it was until I was a junior in college. So yeah,
Oh,
after that,
wow.
Mhm.
yeah, so I was still thinking that business was my path, and I was very much in love with accounting, and I'm so grateful that I did take business though, because now it's part of my practice as management. Whenever I'm not performing, I do a lot of production management and producing. So yeah, it's just very interesting that that journey. Again, it was non-linear. There was no path that was very clear for me. I was kind of always going back and forth, whether it was for me or not. But I'm so grateful that I took a leap of faith and that I jumped to it, and now we're here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
The creative life definitely, like, finds you sometimes,
Mm.
Oh
when
my
you
goodness.
don't choose it or when it's not your first choice, it's like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna show you."
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that it was something that I'm so grateful found me. I think I was supposed to be an artist in this lifetime. Now it makes sense. I was supposed to go through all those hurdles, and I have always been a writer, and I had always done a lot of poetry. I remember just writing a whole bunch of notes to my teachers and
Mm.
poems.
Oh.
And there was like one teacher who actually really enjoyed my poem and was like, "You need to pursue something with writing." And it was because of that teacher that
Mm.
she really did inspire me. And I was like, okay, maybe I could do something with writing. So yeah, it was very, very different from other people's paths, and I'm sure other people's paths are, just as exciting and just as nonlinear. But yeah, I think that's why this life is so magical, because you don't know what's going to happen, and then at some point it all just makes sense. And so that's where I'm at right now, where I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense.
Right,
Mm.
yeah.
Right.
Do you feel like your first instincts to go into business and kind of choose the more traditional path of I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get my degree and then I'm going to go work somewhere? Do you feel like it was part of the cultural implications of, coming to
Mm.
America and being the daughter of immigrants and feeling like you had to further the dreams for your family and do something that is conventionally accepted in society?
Oh, yeah. I do feel that, I I felt an enormous amount of responsibility to give my parents a better life. I grew up so fast, and maybe it's me being intuitive or being just, I don't know, maybe I've been here before, but I remember just witnessing my parents' journey as a youth, and wanting better for them, and also feeling that it wasn't going to necessarily happen fully for them without the support of my siblings and I. We needed to do something, because my mom came to United States in her 30s. My dad came into United States when he was like a teenager, but they didn't meet until later in life. And my mom had her last baby, my youngest sister, when she was probably 39. Half of her life was in Mexico, and then for like a decade, she just spent, raising us, raising my sisters and I.
Mm.
She didn't really have time to go to school and to learn English, even though she ended up being a nurse in Mexico. That knowledge and that training isn't transferred here into the United States. So,
Mm.
all I knew was like, damn, mommy is now in her 40s and things are just difficult. They're a lot harder. And then she developed a chronic
Mm.
illness, and yeah, I just knew, I was like, we have to do something, because it's not going to happen without our support for them. And so I wanted to give my
Mm.
parents stability, and I wanted to give us stability. And it made sense to pursue business. It made sense to pursue something that was going to end up having like a very clear track, a very clear road to success, right? My older sister ended up pursuing a career in the medical field. I ended up pursuing, the arts, but I was very much on path to business. And then my other sisters are
Mhm.
also leaning towards like more medical fields, right? So it was just like very much like, wow, this path is in our hands. Our parents did the best that they
Mm.
could. And there was just so many barriers for them that now it's our turn. I felt an immense like responsibility to give them a better life. And when I ended up pursuing the arts, I was like, oh my gosh, will I be able to give them the life that I always dreamt of,
Mhm.
But I think it all ends up working out though, because I think the greatest thing for them is just knowing that we're happy with the decisions that we make, and we will always have their support.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It's a big weight for a young person, but it's also so beautiful to be able to, like, carry on the legacy of your parents, because I think
Yeah,
that we
Mhm.
all, see what our parents did, and we as an adult can sometimes look back and realize they did the best that they could with what they had, and so now it's my job to see how much further I can carry our family. So I
Mhm.
for
think that's really
sure.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I know that that's
Yeah.
something that is true to me and my sisters. I know not everybody wants to carry that. A lot of people don't want to be the ones to say, now I have to, pass on the lineage and so forth, the legacy. And I think that's also valid, but it just happened to be that for my family, we were like, we're going to continue with the torch. We're going to pass it on and we're going to continue just fighting.
Right. And it
Mm.
seemed like all your siblings were kind of on the same page with you, which helps. It's not like
Right.
you're doing this all on your
Yeah.
own shoulders. It lends me to our next question because it seems like, this responsibility that you've put on yourself, also you being called into the arts, like it's deeply emotional and grounded
Mhm.
in a lot of empathy. So, can you share with us how you've been able to find comfort in the reality that you may experience empathy and
Mhm.
sensitivity in different ways that from others?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people might be into astrology. And
Yeah. Oh,
I'm,
yes.
Oh,
We
we are
can fully dive
people.
in,
We
girl.
are
yeah.
people.
Oh, great. So I'm a Cancer. And,
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah, I feel that, the universe gave me the opportunity to be born in July for a reason. I'm very like intuitive. A lot of my work is driven in the emotions I felt in life, the things that I experienced in life, and the humanitarian part of me has always existed, has always been there. And of course, the factors of the things that I witnessed growing up played a role. But I think that as my mom calls it, es un don. It's like a gift, right? We all have
Mm.
gifts, and we all can offer so much medicine to the world. And so my don or my gift is just basically being, someone who has empathy, who can feel, who can resonate with people, who wants to help, who wants to shed light on the things that people don't want to shed light on. And everybody plays a role in society, and I think that's my role. And I'm okay with that because I think that's the reason why my art speaks so much truth is because it is rooted in truth and it is driven by truth and the pursuit of it and wanting to shed light for the world to see, for the people to see, to witness. Yeah, I would not be able to imagine my life without feeling feelings. without being
Mhm.
without being an empath, without wanting to contribute to society in a greater way.
And
Mm.
a lot of creatives, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of creatives and people
Mhm.
in the arts are empaths because they want to create a world that they can feel seen in as well. And a lot of the art that we
100%.
share and that we create is
Mm.
so political, but it's also so deeply grounded in our feelings and our experiences
Mm.
being in marginalized communities in this country.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that is currently happening that has been happening to our communities, and I feel that now is the time to
Mm.
use our voice, use our bodies, use our knowledge and wisdom to then
Mhm.
inform our next generations of artists and just people. There's so much.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I
It
know.
runs
We
deep
we could definitely have we could sit here for hours. We really could.
and talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we have to just off the record be so careful and meticulous and balanced in what we like bring into like the digital world, because it's like while we are so hyper aware of everything going on, we want to make sure that the art that like her and I create together is a place where someone can come and like kind of find refuge,
Mhm.
still while seeking truth, but also like find a place of peace instead of like constantly talking about all the bad things, because it's like we
For
already
sure.
know about all the bad things. So we're searching for art that's going to make us like feel good while still knowing the truth.
Yeah, it has to
Hmm.
come from a place that's informed.
Right,
But I think
exactly.
that, you know, all of us in queer, black, brown spaces, we just have that understanding of each other already.
Mm.
So it's like I love that art can be so educational, but it can also just be so empowering because it's like, I see you, you see me. While we may be from different cultures, from different communities, like I at least have empathy or at least can understand your experience and see you in that experience. And I think that it removes this veil and this barrier of like having to explain or having to come from a place of like that defensiveness or that like, well, no, you need to understand me. It's like I
Yeah.
already see you for like the fullness of who you are, and it's beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah. I agree. Hmm.
I really like your take on being able to find comfort in your empathy as a gift. I think so many of us can be bogged down by having that as a
Mhm.
gift, so we stop thinking of it that way. So seeing as that is your truth, with the industry that you're in, how do you navigate kind of protecting yourself and that part of yourself and that gift that you have? I guess in an industry that doesn't always prioritize mental health and well-being.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is where I am so
Mhm.
grateful that I was raised by my mother, who was a curandera, una mujer indígena,
Mm,
so much about medicine,
mm,
and I think that that's
mhm,
something that un don, a gift, and something that was passed down from her mother and so forth. And it's just, this gift of medicine, this gift of protection, this gift of limpias, cleanses. And so
mm,
I always knew that I would be okay because I was born to a mother who had that wisdom, and who,
mm,
whenever I had questions about how to protect my peace, how to protect my energy, mi mami was just a phone call away. And she was always like,
Mhm.
pues llévate tu ruda o llévate tu jengibre for your physical body. Just all these remedies that
Mhm.
she was always willing to offer. And she taught me how to give myself limpias. So that's something that I
mm,
feel is super, super, super sacred. And I do that everywhere I go. And it's not only just like
mm,
my career, I do it like in everyday practice. I think society as well. It's important that the moment I walk out of
Mhm.
my home, I feel protected and that I know I will spiritually be more aligned with myself in ways that I could pick up on energies or shifts or things like that. And I think it's a livelihood practice. And so yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so
mm,
grateful. I'm so grateful that mi mami was someone who taught me a lot about medicina and how the
Mhm.
body is the first. I mean, the reality is the body is the first to feel impact. Sometimes we don't, the mind doesn't necessarily pick up on things, but the body will, and the body remembers. And
mm. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I remember when I first, like, my me mommy was always the kind of woman to say these things growing up. And as a youth I was kind of like, okay, I'll just continue on with life, and I didn't pay much attention. And then when I began to feel the repercussions of not having that practice, it began to make sense. I was like, okay, okay, mommy has, sabiduría, she has wisdom in ways that I need to trust that. So yeah, in everyday
Yeah.
practice, I always make sure to carry some form of protection. And I think regulating my body is really important too. Whenever I feel that some things are not in alignment, I always do my best to take a step back and regulate myself, and just kind of do like an outsider
Mm.
perspective of the full experience. And that's something that I
Mm.
learned in production management as well, which is sometimes you just kind of have to take a step back, evaluate things, and then take action instead of being impulsive. So yeah, there's just so many things that I've learned. And yeah, I think that this industry could lean more towards not tending to yourself, but there's also so many
Right.
people, like there's so many people in the community who actually do take care of themselves. And those are the people that I
Mm,
gravitate towards. Those are the people who I'm like, okay, let's be
mhm.
friends because we have something in
Yes,
Yeah.
common.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
guys, like, seek each other out. You're like, "I see you doing the things that I like to do."
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
And it
Yes.
just goes back to, something that we talk about in like self-care practices and mental health spaces a lot is you have to take care of yourself first,
Mhm.
especially in work that's like directly affecting how people feel and see the
Yeah,
world and see our cultures and experience our
yeah,
sexuality. Maybe people are watching something that
yes.
you've produced or something that you've created for the first time, and that's their first experience of like seeing openly joyful queer people on a screen. And so you
Yeah.
have to take care of yourself because
Mm.
you know that it's going to affect the entire experience.
100%. 100%.
Mhm.
I second that. Yeah, it's true, and I think that's why, like, it's so beautiful when you are surrounded with people who do center physical, mental, spiritual health. It's just really sweet because it just feels like everyone's in alignment. And honestly, I cannot do this work
Mhm.
without taking care of myself. I think for a while I was
Mm.
Mhm.
doing this work without tending to myself, and then I experience the consequences of that. Last year, it was just the reality. I had a wake up call. It was like, girl, if you don't slow down, if you don't slow down,
Mm.
the universe will slow you down. And the universe did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I had to slow down, and that was like a huge like moment for me to just continue on the path of rest and mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. So, switching gears a little bit to something I'm so excited to talk about because it is Pride Month. So, happy Pride Month to everybody who celebrates, whether you
Yay!
are LGBTQ
Mm.
plus or an ally. We love that you allies too.
Mhm.
So, I wanted to ask you, in addition to being a highly sensitive person and leading with your empathy and your emotions, what are some ways that you've been able to remain true to your queerness in the Latiné community?
Mm. There's so much there.
I know. Yeah, big one.
Big one. But also, yes, happy Pride Month to all the
Mhm.
queers, to my allies. I love us. I
Yeah.
love us. And I wouldn't change it for a thing. I love my body. I love my sexuality. I love who I am in this lifetime because of it. And there's
Mm.
nothing wrong with us. We are gifts. Again, I keep reiterating the
Mm.
word gift because it's such a beauty to exist in this way. I will
Mhm.
say that, my sexuality is something that I'm so proud of, and I love it. Like, I would ask to be queer again in the next lifetime because of
Mm.
Right?
yeah, because of just how much like it's opened so many things for me in my practice as an artist and just in everyday life, and how I view nature and how Mother Nature is also in many ways queer. So
Mm.
I think that's why, like, growing up, I'm so happy that I came out at a really young age. Like, I came out, I want to say when I was like 11. And so, of course, yeah, I know I was a baby. And
So precious,
Well,
though. So
I know.
precious.
I know. What was that experience like, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I mean, I again kind of like when I went up to me mommy about like I'm gonna be an actress and I just declared it. I just kind of did the same with my queerness. I just openly went up and I was like soy gay, and I was too young to understand the consequences or if there were any. And
Mm.
I think that that was like something that my parents just kind of like brushed off as well. And it wasn't until when I went to high school and I had my first girlfriend where it became like
Mm.
this reality for them. They're like, wait, hold on. This isn't, Kati isn't just like saying these things. This is who Kati is. And my parents call me Kati.
Mm.
Yeah, I even brought my girlfriend over. We would watch movies and stuff like that. And, but, my parents would be there. And initially they didn't agree. And, I think that's normal as far as, I mean, it shouldn't be normal, but it was normal in my household as far as them not fully agreeing
Mhm.
with me. And I gave them time and I gave them space. I think I always knew that they would come around. Of course, it did strain the relationship for a few years, but I always knew that they
Mm.
would come around and that we would eventually like just have a very beautiful relationship, like the relationship we have now, where I can just openly express anything. And just, now I imagine my life in ways that I tell my parents I do see myself marrying a woman or things like that. And that's something that I would have never been able
Mhm.
to
Mm.
share in high school. And now, my parents are like, pues que seas feliz. And so that means a lot to
Mm.
me. And so I think that's why it's so important to, for me to talk about my queerness in Latine households, because the acceptance should be normalized. And also the
Mm.
reality of queer people's existence should be normalized. And I'm so grateful
Mhm.
that I have accepting parents and that they have held me and loved me and supported me and protected me throughout my journey. And I wish and pray that for everyone, because we all deserve to have parents who accept us and see us fully as we are without needing to change us. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a journey, but it's a sweet one now. Hmm.
Mm. I love that. I love how you kind of always knew, like, in the back of your mind, like, this is just a temporary, maybe, like, fear of theirs, like, that you're still their baby, they don't want you to be hurt, and they understand, like, what society is like, they
Mhm.
understand the implications of being so out and loud about your queerness and how that can bring dangers to a lot of people in the community. It's happening every day. So I
Yeah.
love that you knew kind of in the back of your mind, like, I get it, like, I know you guys are scared, but, like, I'm still gonna be me, and
Yeah.
I'm still gonna bring my wife home, okay? and
Yeah.
eventually, like, y'all are gonna love it. Yeah.
Right. It
Yes,
sounds
yes.
like younger you and, like, even high school you didn't well, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like from my perspective of how you're telling the story, like, you didn't have or experience a lot of shame with, coming out because 'cause you're just like, "This is just how I see the world and who I am and who I love." Were there times where, like, shame kind of creeped in, or were you always just kind of, like, out and proud about it?
There was a chapter in my life. I was really young. I remember, I think I was 13 years old, where I was going to like Catholic school. And what is it called when you go to Catholic school? When you go get, ya se me olvidó, catechism?
Like a baptism or a communion. Yeah, like school kind
They,
of.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah. Catholic school,
that's.
like,
Like confirmation,
uh
right? Is that what it's
well, it's
called?
like their
Mhm.
classes. They're like Bible
Mhm.
Oh,
classes in a
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I was involved in that around that age, and I remember just feeling very isolated in my experience and not being able to share that with anyone in my class. And that's when I was also experimenting with my self-expression. I was never that feminine, and so I was always a lot more mask presenting. Now I'm like very femme, but growing up I was very mask. And it was something that I know always brought up some questions, but I just kind of like left it alone. But it was around that chapter in my life where I was like, damn, I don't know if this is okay. And I remember just praying, hoping that it would go away. And I ended up writing about it because it was something that I, at that time, felt so strongly about, which was, a feeling that I needed to pray my queerness away. And I ended up writing a poem called Yo Ya No Rezo, which is I don't pray anymore. And specific for that experience, not necessarily in the sense that I don't pray now, but it was in that moment I remember that version of me as a little girl, just praying away, wanting to pray away the feelings that I was experiencing. And then eventually, I think that lasted for like a year. It just ended up going away because I ended up, I don't know, again, I feel like maybe I've been here before in the sense that I just knew that I was going to be okay, that there was nothing wrong with me. And I didn't even have anyone in my family who was queer. I didn't have any role models necessarily in that way. So I don't
Mm,
know where
yeah.
the confidence or the feeling of I'll be okay came from. I had no idea, but I just knew that I was going to love myself and that I was going to be very vocal about it. And of course, I had people in my life who distanced themselves from me, and I had friends who in high school I played sports, and just being in the locker room, I had an experience where some of the girls were scared from me. And I mean, there's like some moments that I ended up just blocking from my memory because of just like
Mm.
emotionally how I felt and how it made me feel. But then eventually, like, later on in high school, initially I was the first visibly like queer person with one of my friends. And then all of a sudden, like, everybody
Mhm.
was out and about by senior year. So it was like,
Mm.
so it was like, I think we all like grew up kind of like internalizing some of that. And then eventually, once we saw that it was okay to be yourself, then everybody was like, well, then I'm gay too, or X, Y, and Z. And a lot of my teammates ended up
Right.
Mhm.
having partners. And so, yeah, there was definitely moments where it wasn't the best, but, I always felt like everything was going to be okay. I was going to be okay. And that there was no one or nothing that was going to stop me from being vocal.
Yeah.
Man, you're a trailblazer.
I
You're like, "I see her
know.
do it, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
do it too. I'm gonna come out too and be myself."
Yes. It's like that
Yeah.
unapologeticness of it, like the just sincerity in being yourself was just kind of like it was magnetic, and it kind of just like transferred to other people who are like, oh my gosh, I've been hiding for so long. And like,
Mm.
look at this lovely life that she's living. I can live that too. So I love
Yeah.
that so much.
Yeah,
I don't want to end the conversation. I feel like we
I
still have so
know.
much time.
Well, I have something that I wanna ask
Yes,
since
please.
it's Pride Month, because we did
Yeah.
the same thing for Hispanic Heritage Month and Black History Month. I
Mm.
wanna ask you how you're going to honor yourself for Pride Month.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna do everything. I'm gonna just
Yeah.
hold. I'm gonna hold the flag. I'm gonna just talk about it. I'm so grateful that
Mm,
I am a writer because I ended up writing a solo show called Jota. And for the folks
mm,
that don't know what Jota means, Jota is basically just like another word to describe a gay person, with the A being feminine, with the O being masculine. But it was also a word used to like dehumanize and ridicule queer people. And so I've reclaimed it. And so now I'm like, sí, soy
mm.
Jota. And so I wrote a show about it. And so that's what I'm going to be doing for Pride Month, is just like, bringing the Jotaness to the world. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. That's
I
the
love
episode
that.
title, Bring the Jotanes.
Yeah, bring the hotness. I love that. It
Yes.
really it was it and still to this day is used as a very like derogatory word and it is slang,
Mm,
but like the tone in which you call somebody that is really telling of like how hateful that word can really
mm,
be. So to just say that like honestly it's my word and that is who I am. So like if
Yeah.
you're trying to call me that as an insult, it's not going to work because I've already claimed it for myself.
right.
So that's incredible.
Is it on the same level as saying fag?
Yes, kind
Okay.
of.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's similar. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I'm
very
like, I need to
similar.
understand the context. One
Yeah.
time,
Right.
what was it? Was it puta?
Oh, yeah, she's been trying to pick up on her, like, Spanish curse words.
Yeah, and I didn't understand. Like, I thought that puta was like the same as saying like, "Oh, bitch," you know what I mean? And she was like,
Yeah.
"No, it doesn't." And I was like, "Oh my god, I've been running around calling everybody a puta."
That's so funny. Yeah, I guess it also depends on the context.
It does.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're not it's tone like how we're talking about. I mean, you can say like the word bitch in like a certain way where you're like, "Oh, that she's calling me like a bitch for real," or like
Right.
you got to tell your friend something you're like, "Bitch."
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
it's very different. But yeah,
Okay.
no, I guess there's not real there it's hard to have that like same I don't know. I'm not sure that puta does the same thing in
Yeah.
Spanish as it does in English.
Hmm.
It just
Right.
Okay.
There's
depends.
just
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
such a funny story. I love that story.
Yeah. I will say like even Spanish though, like the words in Spanish, sorry, it's just like they come off a little bit stronger, and
Mm.
also like just
Mm,
words in general, like, amor doesn't feel like it equates to love. Like it's hard.
Mm-mm.
So I think that some Spanish words that are curse words or things like that just land a little bit
Yeah.
heavier in Spanish. Yeah. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. It is a
okay.
heavier language. It has a lot of like intention and meaning and
Passion.
passion. Like it's very romantic.
Yeah.
So yeah, like if I say that I love someone, I think in English we use that word like so willy
Flippant.
nilly.
Yeah.
It's just free. But like you said, amor is like it's deep. It's
Mm.
like
Oh my
true.
God. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I get it. Yeah,
I know.
language.
And I'm just learning on the Duolingo, so it's like that doesn't come through like my phone.
Yeah, no, Duolingo is not going to teach you puta.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
Oh
love
my
it.
gosh.
Well, I love that you brought up your project.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can go on forever and ever, and we will support you all the way through all the projects. We're linking everything. So, we did want to give you some extra time to tell our audience all the things that are going to be either coming out in June. How can we support you? Where can we follow you? All the things.
Yay, amazing. Well, yes, I'm doing my solo show Jota, and that's going to be happening in Sacramento, California, with Teatro
Mm,
Espejo in partnership with another theater. I'm more than happy to send all the information to you all. And it's basically the story of a young girl who migrated from Mexico into California and is now moving to New York. But in the midst of moving and packing her
mm,
belongings from her room, she finds these objects that spark conversation of her past, but also the history of LGBTQIA plus peoples in Mexico and in the United States. So
mm,
it ends up being a full encompassing conversation of what queerness means and also the opportunity
mm,
of passing that torch. That the story doesn't end because you're leaving home, but that the story continues and that it's important to continue that conversation no matter where you are. And I mentioned people like Juan Gravier, Walter Mercado, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, and some historical
mm.
moments that happened in Mexico when it came down to queerness. So that's happening in Sacramento, California. Opening is June 20th and closing is June 29th. And I would love for people to come watch if they can, but also if you cannot come watch it, I'm also doing a short film called La Tierra de Sueños, which is translation to the land of the dreams, and it's going to be filmed in New York City in later in the summer. But in June,
Mhm.
I will be starting like a short fundraising campaign because there is still, I believe, 40% of funds that need to be raised. So if people can't show up to my show and they still want to support, they can most definitely donate to come and make this dream a reality, which is my short film. And it's also the story of a young woman who is like una mujer indígena, an indigenous brown woman who is speaking of migration
Mm.
and also holding on to her raíces, her roots in New York City. And yeah, I have a few other things coming up later in the year, but of course, feel free to follow me on Instagram. You can look me up as Katherine Bahena-Benitez or my Instagram handle at underscore IMJSTLIN. I'm just living because I am. I'm just living. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then, once you find me there on Instagram, then you can find my website. You can find all of the other platforms where you can follow me. Hmm. Yeah.
Perfect.
Amazing. Love that so much.
Yeah.
I did remember one last question when you brought up
Yes.
our full acronym. So we have LGBTQIA plus,
Plus.
right? And I know sometime we include a 2S,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
right? For two spirit.
Yes.
So my question is, because your mommy has such deep roots in her indigenous culture, was that a part of the conversation at all? Has it been where
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of brought this up to her in a way?
Oh, 100%. I mean, queerness, I feel, is very indigenous. I feel that it's something that, queerness is something that has always existed prior to indigenous peoples wanting to like continue existing because of their erasure. It's like something that is so native, I feel, to the human
Mhm.
experience. And yeah, I bring it up to my parents a lot. I have conversations with them. There's a lot more history and the reason why there is the erasure of queerness and two spirit people. But I do my best to
Mm.
just inform them and let them know, like, hey, we've always been here. And my dad,
Mm.
someone who is of indigenous descent, campesino all his life, he has always known that and he has always accepted that. I think it was just a little bit difficult for my mom because, she was, I believe, the second generation raised in the Catholic Church. So I think
Mm.
that was something that, kind of, so yeah, I don't know, just kind of having more impact on her, but also the realities that indigeneity in Mexico is also intertwined with Catholicism. So there's a lot of
Mm.
indigenous peoples
Yeah.
that are still Catholic and still practice in indigeneity and rituals, but still hold on to Catholicism. And so that just happened to be my mother's
Mm.
experience. But, with time, it opens that conversation, which is why I'm so grateful that in this lifetime I get to be a queer person because it's something that now
Mm.
I can spark that conversation for other people and, continue that reality of growth and learning and unlearning. It's yeah, it
Yeah.
has a lot more meaning and depth to it. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Amazing.
it's almost like two-pronged, right? So it's like you're a queer person in America, but you're also an indigenous queer person, and
Yeah.
your ancestors had
Mm.
different experiences being an indigenous queer person. So it's like you
Mm.
have to it's balancing, well, not necessarily balancing, but it's like marrying together
Yeah.
the both. The like you said before, like there's so many layers to who we are,
Mhm.
and they
For
just
sure.
always play into each other, and it informs like how we show up and like what we use our platforms for.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is why, there's two spirit people. Why in Oaxaca there's mujes, right? The
Yeah.
culture. So
Mhm.
I think that that's like just the beauty of it. The more I feel people have an opportunity to dive into history, the more we can learn, the more we as a society, the more we as people can go towards celebrating queerness. And again, queerness is a word that
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily resonate with all people. And before
Right.
we were able to have the English language, there was other words that indigenous and native communities were
Mhm.
Mhm.
using. But I also feel like it's important to recognize that and just honor the huge history that we have in our communities. Hmm. Yeah, and I'm like, what better time to have that conversation than Pride Month, but also to do it for as long as we can.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, always.
Pride is
Yeah.
all of the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you going to any Pride celebrations?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's
Yes,
like,
yes,
all of
yes.
them.
All of them, yes. I'll be in California, but I really
Mm,
wanted to be in New York. And New York has a beautiful place
mm,
of, like of just community. But I will
mm,
celebrate Pride Month, not only on Pride Month, but every day for the rest of my
Yes.
life. I think
mm,
that's just like really,
mhm.
really exciting to know. But yes, there would definitely be moments of excitement and celebration, and y'all will probably see. I'll be sharing.
Yay, I'm
Yes.
excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're, of course, going to link everything in
Mhm.
the show notes. And yeah, we want everyone to follow Catherine's journey. And of course, we can always have more and more conversations. So we'd love to have you back maybe after maybe some of your projects are done and you can kind of like recap of, how everything's going for you. We'll love to have you
Yeah.
back on. But I think that's going to be all for today, unfortunately.
I know, I could keep going. I'm like, "Oh, I wanna talk about Drag Race." If she talks about Drag
Oh my
Race, I wanna
God.
talk about, different experiences. 'Cause I mean, I've only been to Vegas Pride, LA Pride, and
Mm.
San Diego Pride. So it's like, I'm always just so curious to hear people's experiences at other Pride celebrations.
Mm,
Oh my gosh, we should plan something in the future.
Yes. Yeah, 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 for
yeah,
Yes,
sure.
we'll be out in
Yeah.
the
And of
we'll
towns.
course, if
be
you're
out.
ever like promoting any of your projects like in Southern California, we would love to come support you in that way and come see your projects if there's ever an opportunity. So just let us know and then we'll let our feelers know.
Yes.
Of course. Thank y'all so much for having me. This was such a beautiful experience.
Thank you.
We're always so excited to meet a new friend.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you to our feelers, of course, for always tuning in. And we will see you next time on the Green Velvet Couch.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's EA meeting.
If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend and leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify. We'd love to hear from you.
You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Empaths and On Pod.
Don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts or subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when we release a new episode.
We'll meet you back here on the Green Velvet Couch next time.
Bye, feelers!